And I know people aren't going to go home and read everything that was on there and make a decision based on that. But you need to keep in mind that these grand jurors poured their hearts and souls into this process. You know, their term was scheduled to end in early September, and they gave up their lives. They put their lives on hold. They put their families on hold. They put everything on hold so that they could come in and do their civic duty. And it was a very emotional process for them. I met with them before any evidence started to tell them what the process was going to be, and I met with them today after their decision. And I can tell you just how emotional and how draining it was for each and every one of them. So to suggest anywhere, or anyone suggesting that somehow, you know, it's just not a full and fair process is just unfair to these people. They poured their hearts and souls into this. Yes, ma'am. Just go right next to you after that.
I'll hand it right over, I promise. Can you tell us anything more about the grand jury? We've heard just some very basic demographics, mainly just race and sex. Can you tell us any more, the basic ages, and maybe perhaps which way those folks voted?
No, I mean, I really can't. That was the information that the judge released and allowed to be released on the demographics of the makeup of the grand jury. What I can tell you, and probably not speaking too far out of line, is that, you know, when any judge picks a grand jury, they're looking for a cross-section of St. Louis County. And I will say that almost any demographic category you can come up with is going to be represented on that grand jury. Various ages, income, where they live, how they live, retired, not retired, still working, blue-collar, professional. Almost anything you can think of is going to be on that grand jury. And they tend to be that way across the across the spectrum. You know, we have 3 a year. Yes, ma'am.
Sir, were there any African-American witnesses who testified that Michael Brown was coming towards the officer when Brown was shot?
Yes. All the ones that I mentioned specifically were all African-Americans. That the one who indicated that he came at him in a full charge, and that as Officer Wilson fired shots at him, Mr. Brown stopped, and Officer Wilson stopped shooting, and as Mr. Brown started charging at him again, those are his words, his testimony, Mr. Wilson started shooting again. And so the others who had very consistent stories, not just with each other, or not just their stories or their testimony throughout, but they were consistent with the others, several others, they're all African American. Yes, sir.
I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about Officer Wilson's testimony and perhaps his status tonight.
Well, I have no idea what his status is, but his testimony was, again, it's in the packet that'll be released. But his testimony, and you know, these are questions a lot that were asked by the grand jurors, as you know, questioning him and challenging him on why he didn't use lesser force, why he didn't run away. And rather than get into the specifics of it, I will say that he did testify, of course, that he was sitting in the car and was punched by Mr. Brown. I think all of that information from his version out there is out there. I specifically didn't do that because, in any case, the target or the suspect is you know, has the most interest in the case, and so we don't put a whole lot of stock. We'd love to hear from him, but don't put a whole lot of stock or can't rely solely upon that testimony. So, yes, sir. The blue shirt.
You mentioned that there's video of the final 10 shots. Would that be released with the rest of the evidence that you're releasing tonight?
I mean, I just assume that microphone's going somewhere, but it's not here.
You mentioned that there was a video of the final 10 shots. Will that be released with the rest of the evidence?
No, there's not video. There's audio. He was on a video chatting in the background there, but yes, that should be in the packet. If it's not, we will get the audio out. Yes, sir. Kevin?
Mr. Percola, I want to ask you a question. Imagining what the people who are protesting tonight might say, they'd say, look, this jury had 9 whites on it and 3 blacks. They'd say, you have a reputation, right or wrong, of being pro-police. What do you say to somebody who might be out there who thinks it wasn't justice? How do you boil it down? Why is this justice, this outcome?
You know, it's hard to boil down everything. That's why I said it has to be based upon all the information that's available. You could certainly take out a witness here, a witness there, and come to a different conclusion. But I think everyone has to look they'll have the ability to look at every bit of evidence and information that was put on and all the testimony and can do that. And some, I understand some people have made up their minds both ways and are not going to change. And so there isn't a whole lot I can do. What I would urge them to do is express those feelings, express them in a constructive way, and try to make some changes so that nothing like this ever happens again. Yes, ma'am.
You just explained that we need to work on issues so that this kind of thing won't ever happen again. Can you explain what are some of those fixes that need to happen, and are any of them including whether or not police should shoot somebody whose hands are maybe at their stomach, maybe at their sides, or maybe up in the air, and they are unarmed?
Well, you know, it's difficult to answer. In fact, it's impossible to answer questions like that because there are so many variables that play into every case. And so there's just no real way to answer a question like that. And so you have to look at every bit of information and every case that comes in. The idea, I hope, is to avoid ever being in that situation. Yes, sir.
Mr. McCulloch, you're somebody who's had his record questioned by many members of the community with cases that have happened in the past. So, I mean, how do you feel making this, announcing this decision, and what message